Welcome to Vijayata IAS Academy. This is the previous year question paper discussion from 2020, paper 1, section A. First question, write a short note on the following, and in that one A, B and then C. Human rights and cultural relativism was asked for a 10 marker. So write what are human rights, what is cultural relativism, and how they are related, and how sometimes cultural relativism conflicts human rights. This would be the structure of this particular question, and that is the structure in which you have to write the answer. So write what are human rights. See, human rights are certain morals or principles which sets the behavior of individuals, and they are actually regulated by national and international laws. These human rights are universal in nature. They are inalienable and undeniable. That means all human beings all over the world, irrespective of their nationality, ethnic group, religion, caste, creed, sex, should avail these human rights. For example, you can take freedom, justice, peace, etc. And these human rights in United Nations General Assembly on 10th December 1948, they gave this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is a milestone event. So these are some guidelines which are to be followed, or a set of norms and principles which are to be followed by all nations, all citizens all over the world. So this is about human rights, a small introduction. Then you can write about cultural relativism. So what is cultural relativism? Cultural relativism is an anthropological attitude that a society's customs and ideas are to be described objectively and understood in the context of the societies of that society's problems and opportunities. So we have to see one's own culture, cultural practices, patterns from insider's point of view, from the cultural actor's point of view. this is what is cultural relativism. Is an anthropological attitude which is a very important anthropological tenet or principle which guides the field of anthropology. This cultural relativism, the proponent of cultural relativism was Franz Boas and his students Ruth Benedict, Melville J. Herskowitz, and Margaret Mead. They promoted, or they are the proponents of cultural relativism. They come under strong cultural relativists that we will discuss later. So this is some introduction about cultural relativism. However, there are different views or different interpretations of this anthropological tenet of cultural relativism. Elizabeth Dechanter, in her article Cultural Relativism and the Abuse of the Individual, which came in Journal of Anthropological Research, 1997, opines that universal morals or universal principles cannot be applied to all societies. So therefore, cultural relativists should emphasize on tolerance towards different societies. In this perspective, we have also another scholar, Paul Rosenblatt, who opines that cultural relativists because of their awareness on customs and ideas would be better to persuade the elite or the powerful or the dominant cultural players to change their behavioral practices which are stemmed from their culture. These are different interpretations. Now you can zero down on two aspects of cultural relativism. One is strong cultural relativism, and the other one is weak cultural relativism. See, strong cultural relativists are Franz Boas, Ruth Benedict, Melville J. Herskovits, and Margaret Mead. According to strong cultural relativism, we cannot judge other cultures or cultural practices, others' practices, traditions, norms, etc. Therefore, we cannot change their behavior. So this is a strong cultural relativism. According to them, all cultural practices are valid because they are seeing from the insider's point of view. In such case, if you take some practices like sati, female genital modification, male genital modification, and other practices which affect the freedom, dignity, decorum of an individual will come in violation with, these violate the universal human rights. If you are thinking that all cultural practices or all practices which a culture, which a society is practicing are right, then this kind of strong cultural relativism will affect universal human right. So there is another view, weak cultural relativism, maybe Elizabeth Zechanter and then Paul Rosenblatt. According to this weak cultural relativism, we can judge other practices, or maybe instead of writing like this, you can write, weak cultural relativism will not refrain from judging other practices, behavior or culture or cultural patterns, whatever may be, and therefore it also does not refrain an individual from bringing in a change. So it actually proposes to bring in a change, which is behavioral or anything else. So in this case, this weak cultural relativists will have suitable arguments to persuade the practitioners of that particular culture. So this weak cultural relativism would not violate this human rights. Rather, it supports human rights and recognizes them and makes sure that they are undeniable. So you can conclude by saying that weak cultural relativism plays an important role to safeguard this universal human rights. So you can conclude by saying that this weak cultural relativism plays a more important role safeguarding universal human rights, which can bring in a positive change. a positive change. So this is about human rights and cultural relativism. So what you are doing, you are writing what are human rights, you are writing what is cultural relativism, then different interpretations like Elizabeth Jachanter, Paul Rosenblatt, and then you can bring in these two perspectives, strong cultural relativism and weak cultural relativism. You know, strong cultural relativism will be silent on even those practices which affect the human rights. So this cannot bring a change. Rather, they prefer to remain silent. Whereas we cultural relativists will bring in a positive change because they know the arguments that can be put forward to persuade these elite, powerful and dominant cultural players and their practices and behavior. That's all for now. Thank you very much.